Hi everyone, welcome. This panel will be discussing funding and how things work, Israel versus Europe, and what the opportunities are. So, gentlemen, let's start with a round of introductions. Uli, let's start with you, please. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, I'm so sorry that I can't be there. So we had the airport on strike, so I couldn't make it to Israel. So I'm Uli, coming from Axel Springer, publishing company, known for media like Business Insider, Politico, Bild, and also in Israel, Yad Stein, and other classified media. So, and I'm coming from Axel Springer Digital Ventures, which is the corporate VC. So to make it short, so I would consider myself as an engineer. So I worked the first 10 years on mobility and on energy systems, and later on internet and now media. And I think the solution is to combine those things. I think tech e-mobility, it's possible. So with the internet and now it's time of convergence of many technologies, and that's something which thrills me.
Thank you, Uli. Kevin.
Yes, thank you very much. Happy to be here. My name is Kevin. I'm one of the managing partners and founders of Reimagine Ventures. We are an early stage venture capital fund based here in Israel, investing at the intersection of interactive entertainment, metaverse, and consumer tech. And we do seed and pre-seed investments here in Israel and follow on, obviously, as long as we can with our companies.
And Sebastian.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me today. Well, I'm Startup and Tech Scout, so I'm leading the scouting team for a family office of Dieter Schwarz. It's called Zukunft4 and Born to Grow. And we are mostly investing in 3 domains. It's industrial tech, medtech and life science, as well as in B2B software. Myself, I'm wearing multiple hats. On the one hand, like scouting, of course, but also we're supporting international companies on the market entry towards Germany. So those are the 2 hats I'm wearing in my company.
Cool. You mentioned the name Schwarz. Is there a connection to the Schwarz AG group?
Not directly. Like we are working totally independent of them, but of course the links are close, right? So not directly.
Okay, so it's not you who did the small acquisition of
The small acquisition, you mean like the biggest acquisition last year?
Yes.
No. We haven't been in touch with that.
Okay, but you're going there soon.
Well, we hope so.
Anyone here for big tickets? No, not yet. We'll complete the conversation. Good. Let's start with Uli with a short round. What are the 3 top hottest domains you see for Europe, like in sector-wise? Where's a good place to invest now? 2 to 3 hottest ones.
What you mean geographically or in terms of business areas?
In your personal belief.
So my personal is, so firstly, I think in Europe, it's when it comes to locations, well, I take mine at the 3rd part, but you may decide. So it's London, Paris, Berlin, so when it comes to Germany, it's you find a lot of local players which it's worth talking to. When it comes to topics, so we are interested in media and marketplaces. So looking worldwide, I see in Europe. Generally, I see a huge demand in mobility, in logistics, and also in delivery. So there are many hot startups. And when it comes to deeper tech, I see a huge potential in any a business area in the IoT. Yeah. So, but for us, so since we are a media company, we look deeper into that. So when it comes to very early investments, our joint venture together with Porsche, APX, invests in also many other industries agnostically.
And Kevin, what are your hottest topics?
So I can talk about mine and obviously Israel at large. I think everybody knows Israel has become one of the cybersecurity powerhouses, and that I don't see that ebbing up. I see that's continuing. So that's certainly a huge area of expertise here with a lot of funding. We see a lot in we see in Israel a lot in meditech, and I think some of the newer areas where we see a lot of investments in Israel are food tech. But Gil, you know as well as I am, and then we are focused on areas where we also see, and Israel has become really a powerhouse hub. One is in gaming and interactive entertainment / metaverse, especially when those themes cross over. So Israel has become internationally one of the top 3-4 locations for any gaming companies worldwide. And because of the connection between the metaverse and the crypto world, and Israel has traditionally also been very strong on the crypto side, we see now a lot of activity around companies working, creating new ideas around NFTs, around Web3, the open web, and including also DeFi. So those areas are super interesting.
And Sebastian, what's interesting for you guys?
Well, if you ask me for my personal opinion, well, I would agree with Kevin. Cybersecurity is getting a big topic and a hot topic also in Germany, as well as fintech and insurtech. If you look at the deal count for 2021, those have been like really emerging areas. But for us, specifically in Israel, industrial tech is quite interesting. You guys are so advanced with that, and that's something what we are looking. If you look into the Israeli market, so those are the main domains, I would say, which are quite interesting for us.
Okay, and Sebastian, I'm an Israeli entrepreneur. I want funding from you. What is like the number one tip you advise me? How do I approach you? What do I send you? What's like number one?
So, well, we are investing in early stage, right? So, for us, it's quite important to have a good team, a complete team, preferably serial entrepreneurs who have been founded already and know about like the barriers which they may have struggles with at the beginning, and then of course you have to convince us at the end. And for us, it's quite important that you're gaining already some initial traction, also towards the German market, because that's how we work. At the end, we validate the investments with reference calls, right? So that's something which is quite important for us.
And Uli, what's important for you, or what do you advise any Israeli entrepreneur? Because hey, we raise funding with an executive summary and a deck. Now I approach Axel Springer. Do I need like a business plan? Do I need how do you? What materials do we have to prepare to get German funding?
Well, so it depends clearly on the stage as well. So what was said in the pre-seed stage, you need a convincing team, and you don't need the full business plan for it. You need a convincing approach, a deck, and APX can also decide very fastly. So when it's later, and the numbers are higher and also valuations are higher, we would love to see some growth in the KPIs. So that's not necessarily money, but is this company able to conquer the market? And also here, it's less the business planning. So it's an understanding of the numbers. So is growth real or is it bought? So, and numbers like customer lifetime value is important. So here we would have a closer look at it. But when you come to us, you should have one interest beyond the money. So, which is, so you need a partner like us when it's very early with the APX. It's a whole network of follow-on investors. When it's Axel Springer Digital Ventures at a later stage, is something where we can utilize our network for as a support of the company, and that can be. In some aspect, it's reach. In others, it's market understanding. I think we understand our markets quite well, also beyond media. And here, I think we could also deliver a lot.
Okay, and how does exit look in Europe? Like, if I'm an Israeli going to the US, I'll probably end it with an IPO or something. How do I exit if I go to Germany or Austria or Switzerland?
Well, we have we have some great examples within our company. So we are a very active M&A company, or a company very active in M&A. So we acquired a lot of companies. So take, for instance, in the media, take Business Insider. So where we did the first step as a venture investor. So, and we behaved like a venture investor, and both sides came to the conclusion that it would make sense to further grow together. And you find a lot of exit deals, but we see also IPOs. For instance, we're invested in N26. Here, very successful neobank, and so it's clear it will come to an IPO. So it depends on what you can achieve and what you want. But I think an exit to a strategic buyer is also an option.
Okay, thank you. And Sebastian, do you also see is exit, if I go for Europe, is it more an M&A path, or do you see other paths as well?
If I'm looking at like the exits of last year, especially also with XM Cyber, I think most of the top exits last year have been happening through a strategic investor as well as through private equity houses. Well, that's of course the way of an IPO, but going through a strategic investor is also like what we advise our portfolio companies, and we also push them in this direction. But not meaning like that we are pushing them like to do this as fast as possible. We are an evergreen fund, so we don't want our startups to push like to have like an exit in 2023, for example. That's something what's quite valuable for us, for our portfolio companies.
And Kevin, what's your take? Because you have the global Israel, Europe, US perspective. Where would you say is easier? Would it be an M&A in the US or in Europe? Because Europe is in much more need for what an Israeli startup has to offer. So what are the chances?
So I think traditionally speaking, it's easier to exit to American buyers. They're just a lot more M&A driven. It's part of their DNA to grow, and let's say traditionally European companies grow more organically. They do M&A, but fairly selectively. I do believe, though, that things started to change a few years ago. We see a lot more European activity here in Israel. You see a lot more European activity within Europe, and I think it's just a question of time also before some of the other European and German companies catch up to the likes of Axel Springer, which has obviously acquired companies here in Israel with Yad Shtaim, for example, and others. or in the US recently, Politico, as Uli mentioned. I think that's still sort of a little bit of an exception in Europe, but I do see a lot of others catching up. As the world becomes more complex, technology becomes more important, you can't simply build in-house everything, and acquisitions will become a driver for growth in the future.
Thank you. I'd like to open for questions. Sorry, Uli, you wanted to say something?
May I just add one point? So as a larger companies, so we love also to acquire companies. As a venture capitalist, I love IPOs as well. So I think so for those considering an exit in the future, it's coming back to this acquisitions. I think they're all companies who can afford it have to acquire companies. It's impossible that that all of the incumbents are able to innovate, to disrupt themselves. So that's a huge opportunity, and they will pay a lot for great technology. So it can absolutely make sense.
So basically, Uli is strengthening what Kevin is saying, since European companies have till now been slower than in the US. He sees that the potential for them to need a competitive edge through M&As is probably larger than a US company at the end of the day. Did I recap it correct? Okay. Now,
Yeah.
I'd like questions. We're here to talk about funding for you. So questions, please. Because we can continue talking till tonight. No questions. Everyone is set. You all have funding. You're all... Okay, so we'll continue. But please raise your hand spontaneously if you have any question. Okay? So tell me if we look a little further down the line, let's say 5 years from now, what is then the number one topic in each of your visions?
Okay, so I'll go
Be
ahead.
generous.
So again, I'm going to stay within my subject matter expertise. I'm not going to venture out into cyber or agri-tech. But right now, we believe we are at the cusp of a new internet being built. Some refer to Web3, metaverse. Really what's happening is that as a human species, we're spending a lot more time online. As we spend a lot more time online, certain behaviors and certain things become a lot more important to us also in that online world. Identity, social status. That's why a lot of kids or a lot of folks who spend a lot of time on Fortnite, Roblox, or anywhere else do spend money on clothing, on skins, right? Because you want to look differently. You want to have your unique identity. If you spend a couple hours a day or 3 hours a day within that world, it's becoming social. You have concerts, you have movies, you're going to have shopping malls, you're going to have part of it decentralized based on crypto and a lot more interconnected. Interoperability is a big word there, where you will be able to also own part of the worlds, right? Through whether it's NFTs or other forms of ownership, you'll be able to participate. You won't just be a user. You're able to control a lot more of your data, of your identity, and what happens with that. And on the closed-end world, we also see opportunities, whether it's with companies like Roblox or Fortnite. We do like a lot of the UGC-driven approaches. We believe there's a huge shift in how Gen Z and a lot of the younger generation views and sees itself working in the future. There's a big shift in labor market. In the US, it's called the big resignation. I really think that's a very negative spin on a huge opportunity within the creator economy. And they will lead a lot of tools, and they will be able to monetize their skill set in a whole different way, in a lot more direct way. So a lot of the companies in the middle and the center will weaken. And that I see really manifesting itself in about 5 years and onward. It'll still take some time, but it's really a beginning of a new kind of internet. that we see here and that we find very, very exciting. And obviously, if you're working on anything in that space, hit us up.
Sebastian, what's your one thing in 5 years?
Well, I'm also going to stick to my domains, and I'm looking at industrial tech. What we also have seen lately, what I'm also like foreseeing for the future is the capability of artificial intelligence. We've seen it like emerging more and more in technology we've invested in, and I think we're just at the beginning of it. Also, 5G is a hot topic, I guess. So if I would set my money on something, I think those two ones in the domain of industrial tech.
Okay, and Uli, but one comment, in 5 years it's not going to be 5G.
Well, so there
8G,
is,
but okay. Uli, go ahead.
Fair enough, yeah.
Uli,
no, there is not this one thing. So what Kevin mentioned here, the metaverse, so that's a buzzword of today. So it sounds familiar for those being older, but I think now is the time where it stays and where it develops. So I mentioned before here e-mobility or the change in mobility that took a full generation to stay. So and now it stays, and I think all the ingredients are there. So that would be also my guess. We will see a lot more in the virtual world. I think we don't have an exact clue what it would look like, but we will invest there. So, and I can follow Kevin 100%. When it comes to the industry, so these old buzzword of the Internet of Things is not yet there. So, but we're seeing in 5 years, we see more devices connected. We see everything connected. Maybe not everything in 5 years, but a lot more. So, and also that's a full revolution. And when I pick out a particular thing, so in health, that will be, so I think we are just in the beginning here. And a general is one thing, and we talk about Europe. So that's a conscious use of data. So I'm not saying we shouldn't use data anymore, but I see a new paradigm. So where the users get back to the possession of their data, and you and we as application providers, we can make use of it with the allowance of the users. So that could also be a huge shift in the market. So take it from today. So the data is everywhere, but not the users, and that might turn, I believe.
Thank you, Uli. And tell me, when I raise money in Germany, is SAFE and CLA a common vehicle, or is an early stage? You know, I'm raising now $500,000. Do I have to discuss valuation and do an equity round from day one, or can I do a SAFE or CLA?
Yeah, so I think it's everything possible. No, yeah, it's also it's not like it was 10 years ago, and so you find the same standards. Maybe the valuations are still higher in the valley, but so the markets in Europe are very attractive. Yeah. And you will find an easy way to invest or get an investor.
And let's talk. Kevin, how do you see the valuations if you look at Israel? If I'm a startup, I'm raising in Israel versus Germany versus US. Where do I get the highest, lowest valuation? How do we order them?
You got the US, most expensive. You got Israel, London, and then Germany in terms of pricing, valuations. I think generally speaking, there was a huge increase in pricing and valuations over the last few years. And I do believe we're seeing this changing already. We're seeing it in the later stages, most definitely. I think it's going to trickle down to the earlier stages as well. So I do believe winds of change are coming in terms of how much money you can raise, at what pricing you can raise, and that's shifting a bit again. But generally speaking, that won't change the fact that Germany will remain cheaper than London, than Israel, than the US. It's simply a function of supply and demand and how much capital is available versus how many startups are seeking that capital.
Okay, thank you everyone. Our time is up. So, Uli, thank you for joining us. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. And you can say thank you as well. Feel free.